This game will be in Frisco, 3 p.m. Eastern time on Univision on 2DN. You can watch it on Twitter in English as well. It'll start the weekend of action, a well spaced out weekend, so you can watch a ton of games instead of 87 games at the same time at 7 p.m. on a Saturday. So, John, what's interesting to me about this is you've got two new coaches, you've got two clubs that are sort of resetting their culture, but you talk about the history. So, where does this game stand? I think for the fans and for the teams right now on April 23rd of 2022.
Yeah, I actually totally lost you and don't know what my lead in there was, but I heard you say the word history. There's definitely animosity between these clubs, but it is a moment where you see, rookie head coaches, right? And rookie head coaches that have got off to a great start. I think that it's kind of fascinating because, maybe the fans don't want to hear this, but I definitely look, the similarities go beyond the fact that they have the same record, right? Like
Mm.
there are things that these teams do or want to do that they have in common. I think those similarities may only get stronger as the managers' respective ideas, tactics, desires get fleshed out, as players adapt, as Houston gets Hector Herrera. There are big things coming for both of these teams, but I think you find them in a very interesting moment now, with the same number of points and with the rivalry tally also extremely close. There's just very little separating these teams right now. There's very little separating these teams all time, and you do have this moment of uh, identity setting is strong, but reestablishing maybe because
Mhm.
you know I think that both of these teams are proud institutions. Houston, of course, with two MLS Cups, FCD with the trophies in the academy production. But last year was unacceptable, right? They were both really bad teams, and now you're seeing them start to reestablish themselves and get in a space where they want to be. So I'm happy to actually hopefully hear your question this time, but maybe I touched on one of the points that you wanted me to.
I listen, John, you're such a pro. You were in the ballpark and you didn't even know what park you were playing at. Talk to me a little bit about Nico Estevez, what you've seen from him so far, and maybe the way he's discussed and talked about this big game.
Yeah, it's interesting because, of course, he's a guy who comes from Spain, where I think the rivalries are well known and well felt. He's had time with the Columbus Crew and time with Greg Berhalter's staff with the U.S. So I kind of asked him, this rivalry is important, but probably feels different, has a different taste, if you want to put it like that, than a lot of these games you play. And he said, yeah, it is different. And of course, it's 3 points, just like any 3 points, but there is a special flavor, a special essence. And I mean, this is a guy who's lived his entire life around the game. He understands what a rivalry means. I wouldn't say he's trying to downplay what the
Mhm.
Texas Derby is, but I think he is very focused on a long term goal of reestablishing Frisco as Fortress Frisco, as this place where FC Dallas can pick up home points. So far, mission accomplished. They've got 3 wins. They look like a totally different team, quite frankly, at Toyota Stadium than they do when they go on the road. Some of that, I think, is just kind of figuring out what the tactics are on the road, what the team wants to be on the road. But Estevez overall, I think, is very methodical. He's surprised me a bit, because I'm sure that and he does have head coaching experience technically, but in the lower leagues in
Mhm.
Spain. I would say this is his first big job, his first division job, and he surprised me because I'm sure every assistant has ideas of what they want to do when they become manager, but it seems like his have worked. You haven't seen that many missteps. I'm not saying he's due for some. I just think he's been methodical, pragmatic, and very measured with how he's taken over the team. Every, I think, new manager comes in and says, "We're going to play exciting football. But he didn't really make those grandiose statements. He kind of was very cautious about expectation setting, and maybe that was, self protection. But so far, it's been so good, and I do think that that same style has filtered into how FC Dallas has played this season, and also how they've approached the year. Because you're not seeing wild changes game to game in personnel. You're not seeing wild changes game to game in system, and you really are seeing FCD starting to establish that consistency, that rhythm, and that identity that I think is so important to getting back to where FCD wants to be, which is in the playoffs and fighting for their first ever MLS Cup.
Before we dig into Houston, I want to ask, is there a place in this team for Franco Hara, or is that just open cup, you rotate rosters, or is there still a belief that they could turn him into a DP factor for this team?
It's so interesting because I think Franco Jara would be an absolutely perfect player for this team if you didn't know what he was making. He'd be a
Yeah.
perfect player for this team if he wasn't filling a designated player slot. He's a guy who he has come in this season as a substitute and changed the game in a positive way. He's absolutely an asset to have coming off the bench. You're not going to drop Jesus Ferreira for Franco Jara, right? You're just not. That's not a good strategy. Jesus has multiple goals in the last two FC Dallas home games, big victories. And do you want to play a two forward system? It looks like the answer for Nico Estevez is no, and understandably so when you have Alan Velasco and Paul Ariola as your wing players. So I
Hmm.
think look, Franco Jara wants more than 15 minutes. I want more than 15 minutes on Twitter. We have that in common, but he just has that salary that we don't have in common, and I think that's the enormous difference. So he does have a place in the team for me, but is it as a designated player? It shouldn't be, right? So I think that's the awkward factor. I'm not sure. It seems like they're just going to ride it out. I mean, I don't know what else you do,
Yeah.
right?
Listen, Nelson Valdez in Seattle, Claudio Bielsa in SKC. There is a little bit of a history of, hey, if it doesn't go right, can they still be a factor? Because as you said, they're still on your roster, they're still on your team, and the coach can use a player of that quality, that experience, all of that. Houston Dynamo on the other side. John, what's your big thought? What's the big keys for them coming into this game, coming into this moment?
Yeah, well, first of all, they didn't help their case last week necessarily with Teenage Arebe getting sent off. I think that you've seen um, some shift already in the Dynamo back line before even I think so much is looking forward to Hector Herrera's arrival, but they've been pretty solid before then. I think it's kind of underrated how good, and of course, hey, the CONCACAF guy points this out, but Coco Carrasquilla, I think, has been really, really quality in the middle. And Matias Vera next to him has been good as well. That defensive midfield core, that central midfield, I think, has been part of the reason that even when a guy like Ethan Bartlow gets called into action as center back, they've only allowed multiple goals this season in that kind of wild, well, not kind of, that absolutely bonkers 4-3 game against the San Jose Earthquakes. And I
Mm.
think when you look at how good those guys have been, it's kind of easy to undersell. It is a team that to me still, look, Darwin Quintero, we know what he can do, but I would say we still don't really know how long he can do it for. And I don't mean like in the is he going to go another 4 years sense. I mean, is he going to go an hour? Is he going to go 90 minutes? It doesn't seem like that's the plan yet. It doesn't seem like that's what he's up to yet. And I think that when he isn't on the field, there still are those questions about, well, where are the chance creations coming from? Sebastian Ferreira, the U theorem, Dave, the Goss theorem says he probably needs more time to adapt. I think that's totally fair. But right now, although he did, open his account, he's on the score sheet. I don't know that he's that player where defenses say we got to look out for this guy. He's goal dangerous. He's the number one, player that we have to stop. Ideally for the Dynamo, he gets to that level, right? But I just don't think he's there yet. I think he's still kind of adapting to the league, adapting to defenses, and figuring out where he fits in Bala Nagamura's system. And so, I would say that especially as good as FC Dallas has been at home, the Dynamo do come into this one as a team looking to, steal points on the road rather than as a favorite. But there are weapons there for sure, and I think that core that the Dynamo have established in the middle and looking the defense, look, it's improved even with Bartlow coming in. It's an improved unit from last year. Steve Clark, I think, has obviously helped that a lot as well. So it's a better team. Both of these teams are better teams. It's still early, but we are past the fifth point of the season. So maybe it's not too early to say, look, these teams are better. Their fans are going to be happier in 2022 than they were in 2021. And it looks like both front offices have kind of made the right moves to make that happen. I mean, both of them bringing in record signings, even though Houston's isn't here yet. It does seem, whether it's Austin, whether it's just a desire to kind of keep your club's history going, whether it's a desire to get more relevant in the market, it seems like both of these franchises are taking steps to leave 2021 in the past to move forward. And I think it's going to give us great Texas derbies, not only this weekend, but when they meet again in July and hopefully for some time to come.
It is exciting that it's not just El Capitan, but it is, as you said, for playoff spots, for standings. It matters more across the league as these teams have had strong years coming here so far in 2022. So 3 p.m. Eastern Time, Univision 2DNA, Twitter in English for Dallas, Houston, the first of the year. Also at 3 p.m. Eastern time, Philadelphia hosting Montreal. That one on ESPN Plus here in the U.S. It's a heavyweight matchup. This is a big one. Obviously, you're hearing the talk now of Georgi Mihailovic in an MVP conversation. Montreal 4 straight wins after falling out of CCL, which has been a godsend to them. And from what we saw from NYCFC last week, it might just be for everyone. But we hope Seattle wins it going forward over the next few weeks. And I think this is going to be a fun one. How does Georgie find space against Jose Martinez along that Philly back line as well? And how do Carranza and Ua sort of match up against the back three for Montreal? It's a unique 2-man center forward setup. Montreal has not faced that over the course of this year much. And so how does that all work against each other? I think is going to be really fun to watch and really interesting in that one. So those are our 3 p.m. games. We move on here on Saturday, 5 p.m. Minnesota hosting Chicago. That one on ESPN and ESPN Deportes. But John, I got to go all-star here because we just found out yesterday Minnesota United will host the All-Star game for the first time ever. And for the second time ever, they will host the Liga MX All-Stars. If you don't follow John Arnold, just do it in general on Twitter. But if you especially don't follow him, he writes a CONCACAF newsletter. He covers FC Dallas for the Striker Texas, as well as Liga MX and all CONCACAF things just on pure entertainment and fun. And he's the best who does it. So, John, what was your reaction to the second ever Liga MX All-Star versus MLS All-Star game?
Yeah, well, I'm glad to see the announcement. The league said, "Hey, All-Star game, it's happening, but we're not going to announce the opponent yet." And I was thinking, well, I really thought it was going to be kind of a long-term deal against the partners at Liga MX, and then sure enough, it is. So I was happy to see it. I think that obviously MLS, we know what the benefit is, right? You get the cultural capital of playing, some Liga MX stars that so many people watch every weekend in the US. We obviously have all seen the TV ratings. We know the interest. We've seen, maybe we ourselves or our friends and neighbors have a Tigres sticker, a Monterrey sticker, or whatever the sticker is on the back of the car. We know that Liga MX is enormously popular in this league, and we know the benefit MLS gets from playing Liga MX and getting attention on that side of the border. But I think what gets underplayed, Dave, is that Liga MX teams get benefit from this partnership too. And last year in Los Angeles, I was able to be there and speak with a number of executives that work in Liga MX teams and managers and sporting directors as well. And you really do have this interchange of ideas. You have this kind of best practice sharing. I think it's easy to dismiss that as kind of press release speak. Oh, well, of course the owners are going to get together and have some swanky dinner and chat. But it goes beyond that. It really does. And I do think that you're seeing both leagues take advantage of the best of each other. And I think that that's a special thing. And so putting that on the field, having another skills competition, setting the stage for opportunities like the Ricardo Pepi penalty, like his quote unquote battle, the laughing, joking with Nahuel Guzman. The more sort of cross culture events like this you can have, the better. And so I think it's a great idea for the league to keep playing a similar team like they did last year, and not kind of look back to Europe. I think that the more look, I'm obviously biased. I am the CONCACAF guy, but I think so often it's easy for us to just say, well, Europe does it right. And sometimes they do, and we can absolutely take things from that. But sometimes other places closer to us are also doing things right. We can celebrate that. We can build on that, and I think this is another chance to do so. So I'm looking forward to it. I thought last year was a lot of fun. And what is the All Star Game for, if not for fun? So I think it's a great exhibition. It's a great call, and I think it's going to be another fun event.
I am there with you. I'm in the trenches with you, John. Pro CONCACAF, pro this region and its soccer history. And on the field, by the way, I think it's already a given that Antuna scores a hat trick. It feels like Ariel Antuna just loves playing against MLS and US teams. So I feel like that's the star that we're going to watch emerge in this game again as he has continued to grow and grow. But it'll be a lot of fun. Obviously, coming up in August, we've got a ton of time to preview it and talk about it. Minnesota hosting Chicago in this one. Still hearing question marks around Shaqiri, but Jairo Torres should be heading to Chicago in about a week and a half, so that he can start his Chicago Fire career. And I think a huge moment in MLS history, his signing, hopefully will start to lead to more of that exchange at a younger level between MLS and League MX. John, I want to close you out on this one. Austin hosting Vancouver, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, MLS Live on ESPN Plus. My Texas expert, I need to know San Antonio beating Austin in Open Cup. How big a deal was that? How will it affect Austin?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think the lineup was much stronger than I expected. And then, you see San Antonio get the victory, and you do wonder, is this going to linger? I think Austin was flying so high, and so many of the personnel that you see as the starters were in that game. I think it would be easier to dismiss if it was, well, we played a substitute lineup. It was our reserves and our young kids, and they didn't come through. But it kind of wasn't, right? For the most part, a goalkeeper, that's a big one. But for the most part, you saw a lot of familiar faces, and I do think that maybe more than other teams, there could be a hangover effect here because the vibes were so good around Austin. There's such positive feeling. They're filling our buddy Weeby's mentions. That not the players themselves, but there is that sort of mood, that vibe around the team. In a way, I think it makes this contest bigger this weekend because you're at Q2 where they've been so good this season. But I think there was kind of the balloon maybe not popping, but a little air getting let out of it. Where it's like, oh yeah, this is still hard. This is still tough. We're not just going to be able to have the success we've had so far. We have to keep working for this. I know that the locker room, I know that Josh Wolf knows that. I'm sure was preaching that, but I think that it's a tangible reminder when you lose a game to a team in USL Championship that nothing is given, and I don't think this weekend is given either. Even though they're at home, even though they've been so strong at Q2, even though the atmosphere will be so fantastic like it usually is, I do think that you don't want to lose two games across all competitions, and so it really is goes from to me kind of oh yeah, we got a big one this weekend. Every game is worth 3 points to almost an obligation that you have to bounce back and deliver the result for the fans who do fill that stadium because they're going to be getting chirps from their friends down I-35 for quite some time after losing that cup game.